Welcome back, TP Review TV viewers. Chris Nichols here, and as you can see, I'm in black and white right now, which means only one thing. We are looking at the brand new Leica M10 Monochrome today. Now, this is the second monochrome camera that I've personally played with. I always enjoy shooting black and white, so this is gonna be a lot of fun for me today. And this is effectively an M10 body, but with a specialized monochromatic sensor. And that's very interesting for a couple of reasons. Now, first off, because we don't have a Bayer filter in the way, and we don't have to split our channels red, green, and blue, we should actually get better resolution out of the sensor. On top of that, it has increased to 40 megapixels, which is a big jump over the previous 24. It's a brand new mystery sensor. We've never played with it before, so let's all learn together and see what we get today. So I've got three lenses that I'm trying out today on the M10 Monochrome. First off, the 90mm 1.5, brand new, state of the art, very, very fancy. I've also got the trusty 50mm Summilux, so I'm gonna be using that for a lot of street shooting as well today. And then we have the new 28mm 5.6, which is actually modeled off of a very old style screw mount formula. Lots of vignetting, soft corners, but lots of character. So it should give you a good cross section of many different lenses. Oh, I think they sell balloons here. Should go get some balloons for a filter test. Oh yeah, beautiful. So of course the Leica M10 Monochrome is basically identical to the standard Leica M10. It is a true rangefinder, of course. I am using the VisiFlex on here though. They provided it and I do like it, especially with the 90mm, but overall I do personally prefer having a digital viewfinder. My eyes aren't getting any better and I like being able to punch in and magnify and just confirm focus, especially with wide aperture lenses like this. But overall it also means that the controls, the ergonomics are going to be identical to an M10. That does make sense for somebody who's going from a standard one to the monochrome version. You don't have to relearn anything. All the ergonomics are going to be the same, the muscle memory, etc., etc. However, I do still feel like having a new camera like this, there's opportunities to change some things, and I really do want to see a better ISO dial. I still would prefer like a pull up, rotate, and lock back down dial that gave me full ISO options, but this one's always a little bit tricky to move. So be it. It's the same as the M10. If you're used to that, you'll be used to this as well. Otherwise, the touchscreen interface works well. The control pad seems okay. I do feel though that I'm often pushing that center bottom with my palm, just holding the camera, and that's turning my display information on and off. So minor annoyance. Now this Leica M10 Monochrome is very stealth. I mean, there's very little on the front, no Leica red badge, no tape required on this camera. All the etchings are very low key. They moved the monochrome name over here now onto the top plate from the hot shoe, and a very quiet shutter here, listen. Jesus. All right, let's go. So as we've talked about, a black and white only sensor does have some unique advantages. First off, this camera will punch well above its 40 megapixel rate. It's hard to give a number equivalent, but regardless, you're getting tons of detail, tons of resolution. For me, honestly, 40 is plenty, but I'm also really liking the low light performance and the high ISO rendering. Leica's always done a great job of showing that sort of noise structure as a very organic, grain-like structure, and it is beautiful. But testing this camera and pushing it well up into 12,000 ISO, we're still getting very good detail, really, really nice sharpness, very impressive. And so if you are gonna shoot low light photography, this does give you some advantages. And let's be honest, when you shoot black and white, it does cover up a lot of issues as well. Now the back dial here, I'm customizing for exposure compensation, which I often do on these Leica cameras. And you're gonna find often today that I'm actually underexposing a lot of the photos. Maybe it's a third of a stop, maybe it's 2/3, maybe more. And there's certain reasons for that. So first off, I do find I've got my clipping indicator on and highlights do clip quite easily. So I wanna control those, but also the sensor on this camera is very sort of ISO invariant-like, which means that I can always boost shadows after the fact as I need to, especially on a black and white camera where if highlights are blown, they're really not coming back. It's better to underexpose the shot, and then in post, bring up those shadows afterwards. So long story short, just to give you an example, rather than raise my ISO up higher to get the shadow detail I want and risk blowing highlights, I can simply keep the ISO low, bring up the shadows afterwards, basically get the exact same amount of noise in the shadows, but now have highlights that are protected. I get to have my cake and I get to eat it too. So overall, I do like the placement of this back dial. I'm using it a lot to change my exposure, especially on this camera. I do wish though that it had a push-in function a la like a Panasonic camera where I could toggle back and forth between ISO and then exposure comp. That'd be nice. I would never ask them to put it down the front because of course that would mar the beautiful aesthetics of this camera. So, you know, there's not a lot of things that we can complain about here because keep in mind, although this is a new camera, it is still an M10. So I don't expect the VisiFlex to be any higher resolution. Although, of course, being an external part, that'd be great if we could get a newer high-res one. This one, though, is still working well. I'm liking the rangefinder VisiFlex combination because if I need to focus quick and just kind of see what's outside my frame, I can go right to the rangefinder, go to the VisiFlex, which is admittedly where I'm using it most of the time, to get precise focus and be able to preview the scene in black and white. I mean, that's a really big advantage, especially for this camera. Now, of course, I've just said that I'm not going to complain about the M10 platform, so you're not going to hear me complain about the fact that we still have to take off this bottom plate to get to our memory card, change our battery, and you're not going to hear me complain about the fact that I would still have to take off a tripod plate, then take off this plate, then change those things. I'm not going to complain about that. One thing I will mention though that is different, because we have a larger file size now with 40 megapixels, I do find that if I want to view my photos in playback, it takes a little bit of time. For example, if I have the auto review set on and I take a picture, it does show up right away. I can review it, I can chimp my shot. But personally, I hate auto review because I hate that delay. I want to be able to shoot again and not have to cancel the review out to get a shot. If I turn it off though, and I take a picture and then I do want to see that right away, hitting playback will often leave me with just the file name, and I got to stare at that for about a second, second and a half until the photo comes up, and that can get a little bit inconvenient. I want to talk about an aspect of black and white photography, and I'm going to use this wall to illustrate. We're going to talk about it in just a bit. But when you use an RGB censored camera that shoots color, you can shoot in black and white mode, but Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever you're using still knows what colors are what, and you can adjust contrast by color channel, and that's what a lot of us do with black and white photography. It's a lot of fun and it's easy. Now, when you're shooting a black and white only camera, you can't do that. Photoshop isn't going to know what channels were red or green or blue. So if we take a look at this wall here, I know it looks black and white, but Jordan's going to show you some colors right now. And you can see we've got blues, we've got yellows, we've got red tones and whatnot. And what you can do here is then use classic colored filters, just like if you're using black and white film. Now that might seem like a cool feature and a vintage throwback. I do far prefer doing it in post, but if I want to change my contrast by color, this is the only way to do it on this camera. So for example, if I screw in a green filter here, anything opposite of green, like those red tones, will go darker. But if I screw in a red filter, anything opposite like the blue tones will almost go black, and anything similar like the red tones will actually go so pale that you can't even see the writing anymore. So it's a fun throwback. It's neat to break out those old color filters, but at the same time, you get a lot more flexibility if you can do it in post with a color RGB sensor. So using the M10 Monochrome today, it's exactly the experience I was hoping for. It's a lot of fun. I love shooting black and white, and it's not about trying to justify the expense. It's not about trying to find out if it's practical or not. That's besides the point. We still have to remember that this is an M10 platform, as different as the image quality is from the standard M10. So we can't expect many improvements. And do I wish this camera had IBIS? Yes, absolutely. I think that would be super helpful on a platform like this. Do I wish it had better battery life? Yes. Even though the VisiFlex is a separate device, do I wish it was a higher resolution VisiFlex with less lag? Absolutely I do, but this still is an M10 camera, and so it's going to behave a lot like another M10 would. So I think we're going to have to wait for an M11 before we get some of those real substantial upgrades. But the one thing that they can change, because it is going from a color RGB sensor to a black and white camera, is a new sensor. And so far, I've been really pleased with the image quality that I'm getting out of it. Now you can see the sample galleries on dpreview.com. We'll have those up shortly. Check those out. Please check out our Instagram feeds and our Twitter feeds. In fact, Jordan's shooting on a Fuji X-T3 today in Acros mode because he put out a Twitter poll and that's what you wanted. So we're going to be doing more polls, more requests, that kind of stuff. So please check that out there. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything coming up in the future. Thanks so much. See you soon.